Hello, welcome to our presentation on the changing styles of letter writing. My name is Tanja Säily and this is joint work with Turo Vartiainen, Harri Siirtola and Terttu Nevalainen. Now, personal letters are a speech-like genre and they provide us with access to everyday language use in the past. But how has this genre changed over time? Is there sociolinguistic variation? Douglas Biber and associates have conducted some multidimensional studies of a number of linguistic features in the Archer corpus, which covers the 17th through the 20th centuries. And they found that the letter genre becomes less informational and more personally involved over time. So these are the features of involved versus informational texts in 18th century English, as discovered by Douglas Biber. So these features have clustered into the negative and positive poles of the dimension. So on the involved side, we have features like first-person pronouns, second-person pronouns, and different types of verbs, for example. Whereas on the informational side, we have, for example, nouns. So these types of trends have been studied in other ways as well. So we now have more and more of these post-tagged corpora, where we have ready access to information of the part of speech and how the ratios change over time. So, for example, we have studied part of speech ratios in 15th to 17th century correspondence in a corpus called the Past Corpus of Early English Correspondence. And there we found, in line with Biber's results, basically, that the proportion of nouns decreased and the proportion of lexical verbs increased. So we hypothesized that this was due to a process of colloquialization. And we were able to kind of bring back Biber's results, so we went all the way back to the 15th century. And also this was a bigger corpus of letters, so the results might be even a bit more reliable. And what we also found, which cannot be studied in Archer because it doesn't have the information on the gender of the letter writer, was that there seemed to be gendered styles of writing. So women consistently throughout the centuries used fewer nouns and more personal pronouns than men. So we hypothesized that they might be the leaders of this change towards a more involved style. And in another study, we looked at first and second person pronouns specifically, because in this previous study we were not able to look at these pronouns because the pronoun tagging only said personal pronouns as a whole. But here we retrieved the results by hand and we were able to look at it. So we looked at a corpus that was in the same family of corpora, so a corpus of Early English correspondence. And we looked at the 17th and 18th centuries. So we found support for the earlier finding of gendered styles. So women tended to use more of these pronouns. But we also found that audience design clearly influenced the use of pronouns. So men acting in different social roles used pronouns at different rates, for example. And we also found an interesting thing about the 18th century. So the gender differences seem to decrease or even disappear there. So we hypothesized that maybe this could be kind of evidence for a development of a shared writing style amongst the upper classes in the corpus, where we have a lot of people who belong to the literati of the time in the 18th century part of the corpus. And I actually found a similar results for the nominal suffix ity earlier. So ity was used more productively by men in the 17th century, but then this difference mostly disappeared in the 18th century. And we have tried to explain this through societal factors. So women had increased access to education. And also it seems that the 18th century culture, especially in the latter 18th century, was what we can call feminized. And this kind of showed up also in a more interpersonal style that takes into account the recipient. But of course more research is needed, so we only looked at these two features so far. So now we have access to this tagged corpus of Early English correspondence extension. So we have conducted the post-tagging in recent years. And this corpus covers the long 18th century, so mostly 1680 to 1800. It's based on published original spelling editions, that were sampled and digitized by a team at the University of Helsinki. And for this version, the spelling was standardized using BARD, so that the present date tagger would understand the language better. And the corpus was compiled for historical social linguistics, so we have metadata on the letters, writers, and recipients. So basically we know who the people are and what their social status was and so on. And at 2.2 million words, it's quite a big corpus, bigger than the correspondence section of Archer, and it represents a wider social spectrum, so it enables more nuanced analysis, and we can take into account these social factors. And the post-tagging was carried out using clause 7, and the accuracy is about 94.5%, so not too bad. So our research questions. We're interested in this informational versus involved style, so we're going to focus on noun frequencies as a proxy for informational style. And we want to know whether the noun frequencies continue to decline. So we looked at the earlier part of the corpus, and there we saw the decline. How does the 18th century compare? And this would also support the results from Archer, that there is this move towards a more involved style. And is there a continued gender difference, like in the PSEQ? Or is there evidence for the development of a shared style, as implied by the pronoun research? And what is the influence of other social factors, like social rank or the relationship between the sender and recipient? Like, are they family, are they friends, are they other acquaintances? And then we're interested in lexical verbs as a sort of proxy for involved style. And we want to know whether there is this continued increase from the PSEQ results, which would then also support the results from Archer. And is there any influence of social factors? So in the PSEQ we didn't find, for example, a gender difference here. So to make this exploration easier for us, because we are not sure what we want to look at specifically, or we want to look at multiple different things, and we want to be able to kind of very nimbly change our groupings, we have co-developed a tool. So basically it was done by students who were taking the data science project course at the University of Helsinki. And myself and Terttu were the clients, and then the students were Arthur Hughes, Hilma Holappa, Mia Remö, Mikko Lipsanen, and Pyöri Vartiainen. And this tool enables the visual exploration of part-of-speech ratios over time. And also you can filter it by social category. So for example, here we can look at the pronouns I, me, and you, and compare men and women. And we can see this result that we already had, that the difference decreases over time. Or you can also group the post tags, like here we are looking at I, me, and you, which is a custom grouping. And we can experiment with periodization, so here we're using 40-year periods. And we can also group the social categories, like if we want to have custom groups of social ranks. So, some of our pilot results. Here we can see nouns and lexical verbs. And there is a bit of a kind of effect towards the direction that we expected. So we get a little bit less nouns as time goes on, although in the middle of the corpus there doesn't seem to be that much change. And also for the verbs we get a little bit of an increase, mostly sort of between the first and second 20-year periods here. But there's a bit of a change after that as well. And looking at gender, so there is a gender difference, and it does perhaps become a bit smaller over time. So certainly it is at its biggest in the first period. Here we're using 40-year periods again. And to find out what our conclusions are with regard to this, please attend our talk at the conference. Thank you.